Addiction, lies, and ego are all the same thing. Addiction is the lie that the problem is a solution and that the solution is a problem. It's the idea that I can fix something that's broken in thought, that has no substance in thought, with something I consider a substance worthy of using. Drinking, drugs, the intoxication of love, gambling, all of the things that would release chemical cocktails in my body that would intoxicate me with the ability to create this risky, adventurous experience, when in fact what I'm doing is risking exactly what it is I claim to think. I claim to maintain that there's a promise, and the promise of addiction is the broken promise. So the promise in gambling is I'm going to lose. That's the promise. And I can think I'm going to keep winning, but the more I think I'm going to keep winning, the more I subject myself to the potential of loss, so the experience would be greater loss, typically. So addiction is the idea that I can do what I can't do, and as a result, it's the only thing I can do. And the idea that choice is only has one option is a lie, because choice wouldn't be a choice if there was only one option. It would be an instinct. It would be an automatic knee-jerk reaction. It would be something that couldn't otherwise not be chosen. And one of the components of the principle of choice is that you always have the chance not to choose it. You always have the chance to think of something and not choose it. Addiction is the idea that when I think of it, I got to act on it, that there's no other choice but to act on it. And that's a lie. So getting to a lie, what's a lie? Well, a lie is a thought that's wrong, and it's not the wrong thought that it's a lie. It's my contention that that wrong thought is right, that it's a lie. And when I believe it's right, I've got to defend it and maintain it in a full-time disposition. My disposition becomes defensive, becomes offended by any contrary thought to the defense of the weak idea I have about the thing I claim to be truth. And I then become the creator of truth and reality, because now I've taken something that's wrong, and simply by believing in it and having faith in it and having hope in it, thinking that somehow it's right and someday it will become right. That's exactly what addiction does too, because addiction is a lie. So a lie only exists as long as it claims to be the opposite of what it is. And a lie doesn't claim to be the opposite. I claim to be the opposite of what it is. As long as I claim a lie is true, I have an internal conflict that is impossible to resolve as long as I continue to maintain that. My experience is I have hundreds of those beliefs that aren't true, that I continue to maintain and look out and see in the world that I think is the world I'm seeing, when in fact what I'm seeing in that world are the thoughts I think about that world, not the actual world that's there. So to any degree that I am hamstrung or hampered by this maintenance, my ability is disabled, and my functional capacity is a dysfunctional expression of a functional capacity. So I have no chance of actually getting any hope, because I'm relating to a world as I see it, not as it is, and it's very hard to be productive when you're dealing with illusions and fantasy. So a lie is a lie based on that. When a lie is a lie, it's actually true, ironically. Actually, not ironically. It's actually true, because when a lie is a lie, it isn't a lie anymore. So a lie is only a lie as long as it's maintained to be the exact opposite of what it is. And if you give a little consideration to that, it's pretty easy to see that if something only exists on the basis of being the opposite of what it is and nothing else, it can't then be what it claims to be. So a lie dissipates when it's allowed to be a lie. There's nothing there. There's no fight. There's no maintenance. There's nothing to do with it. So ego. Ego is a function of what we think about ourselves. It's a function of thoughts or images, imagination, their ideas. And if I'm standing in front of a mirror and I think that mirror is who I am, I've really missed the point that the image in the mirror is simply a reflection of who I am. And ego is a reflection of what I think I am. Ego is an image of self. And when my thinking thinks about itself, it thinks of a self born of thought. And that's ego. So if ego is only what I think about myself, then the only way that ego is maintained, just like a lie, is for me to always be thinking about that self. It takes constant vigilance and constant insight, meaning I'm looking inward constantly trying to sort out what I'm thinking about myself to finally get it to a point where it stays still. And as soon as I think it does, it immediately starts to change, because thoughts are always changing. Unless we're contemplating absolute principles and recognizing a sense of knowing that doesn't think, which would be our being nature, then thoughts are always in some form of turmoil, trying to make conclusions, and it's not something they shouldn't be doing. It's actually exactly what they're designed to be doing. They're designed to assess and analyze and take in information and help us become better at predicting what's going on around us in functional ways. And when my thinking is dysfunctional and I'm addicted to thoughts that aren't happening, I am not relating to what's happening at all, so how I'm going to relate to it is going to be dysfunctional and destructive and undermine my capacity to be productive. That's just natural. So another thing I'm going to add into this is allergy. An allergy is an abnormal response to something. So when I get poison oak, which I used to seem to have an allergy to, and I would get it, I would scratch it. And when I scratched it, it would release the pus, and the pus would create new sort of outbreaks of poison ivy. And so when I do the thing that makes it worse, that's an abnormal reaction to what I'm doing. And an abnormal reaction is an abnormal use. If I put that reaction into use, like addiction, it's abuse. Abnormal use, abuse. I'm abusing the self I think I am. I'm abusive to other people. And it's all a function of this allergy reacting. What am I reacting to? If the being nature of my existence is truth, then I know truth, and I don't have to think I know truth to know truth, because how I know truth is true is that when I am not thinking and operating based on that truth, I dysfunction, and I feel bad, and I feel wrong, and I feel less than, and I feel low self-esteem, and low sense of value. And all of those reflections are my admission that I know exactly what I'm doing is wrong. And the quicker I am to begin to look at those and read those as signs, body language, my functional literacy begins to wake up, and I begin to be thankful for the body and the conditions I have, rather than feel condemned by them and self-pitiful about them and a victim to them and absolutely incapable of doing anything about them, because I'm continuing to maintain the idea that it's not something I'm doing, but it's something happening to me. So the underlying nature of all irritable, reactive, impulsive, compulsive behaviors is a lie. And addiction is a lie. And what am I trying to do by having compulsions? Escape the lie. I'm trying to take something that has no substance, because it's born completely in delusion, and use substances to make up for it. Alcohol, drugs, the intoxication of the body chemicals I'm able to release through risky behaviors. Risky behaviors that I'm afraid of, not because this is some undue fear, but because my body is designed to let me know when things are happening in my environment that are threatening me, and the fear I create is actually a perfect metaphor, reflection of the fact that I know that what I'm doing is not healthy. And acting in ways that aren't healthy creates dis-ease. Dis-ease is a lack of ease. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that to begin to see that when I undermine my body's capacity to function, I'm asking for consequences to finally bring me into an alignment with what I'm doing. If I'm willing to see it, and very often when I'm not willing to see it, if not always, those circumstances I'm facing continue to get worse and worse and worse and worse, until I'm finally willing to say, something's wrong with what I'm doing. Me. It's my choice that I'm causing. We each have choice. We each have the yes or no button, each of us. I can't tell you what to do or how to do it. And nobody who tells you will ever tell you without you using them to justify blame and shame and fault because you don't live up to what they told you to do. When you make the choice and see that it's choice, when you're willing to come to terms with what you're doing, you'll see that you have a functional capacity well beyond anything you ever imagined, because all you've ever imagined is what you imagined to be depraved, limited, destructive ideas if you've been addicted to thinking. My suspicion is all humans to some degree suffer with this. And the ones that absolutely say they don't are the ones that are clearly suffering from the idea that it's not even possible, when in fact, if all that's possible is possible, it's all possible right now. So that's a little glimpse into addiction, lies, and ego. And you'll see in our conversation how this all blends into the same thing. It's not like they're individual issues. They're all the same issues in a broader context of beginning to look at truth and reality as our fundamental basis, and is something that we can absolutely rely on, that has no doubt. To say truth is true leaves little room for conflict, little room for argument, little room to wonder, and plenty of room to be in awe over the freedom of beginning to look at things clearly without the preoccupation of thought that ends up filtering and creating a lens on what we see, so that all we see is only what we see in relation to what's sick in our own thinking. And it isn't ironic that we're depressed over seeing that kind of stuff, because it's depressing to only be seeing things that are sick. And when my thinking's sick, that's what I'm going to see out there in the world to confirm that my thinking is right. Because the only reason I maintain sick thinking is to make believe someday it'll be right and true and real, when in fact it's just an illusion that's a delusion and an imposed, induced state of mental condition that's very, very difficult to live with. I have been sick and tired enough in life to realize that if I'm still tired, I'm still not quite sick enough to admit it. And I may be both of those things, but if I'm tired, I'm clearly indicating I'm still trying to turn that sickness into some healthy attribute, rather than recognize that we're built on a platform of health. We're built on a platform that's absolute. We're built on an all-knowing something, without even having to define it, just to simply say whatever it is, to have everything that is what it is, as it is now.